Very Bad Wizards is a podcast with a philosopher, my dad, and a psychologist, Dave Pizarro, having an informal discussion about issues in science and ethics. Please note that the discussion contains bad words that I'm not allowed to say, and knowing my dad, some very inappropriate jokes.
It is a good viewpoint to see the world as a dream.
The Clayton boss has spoken. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Good man. They think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have. Pay no attention to that man. Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.
Welcome to Very Bad Wizards. I'm Tamler Summers from the University of Houston. David Lynch is doing NFTs now. What the hell is the world coming to?
Wait, I thought that David Lynch doing them would make you all of a sudden become like a crypto nerd and just be like tweeting about like your favorite Bitcoin and how the economy is changing. Like not even David Lynch can convince you.
No, I think he probably could. I remember back in like 2017, 2018, but I think it was end of 2017 where I'm just so obsessed with Twin Peaks and David Lynch at that point, and it's also like a huge bonding experience with my daughter. And then he puts out some kind of quote where he said about Trump, like he could be the greatest president of all time or something and what he meant was like he has the potential to reach people that like no other politician has a potential to reach or something like that. But of course he didn't clarify, and who knows what
You're a
meant.
wonderful apologist. Now I'm going to be like our audience is going to be convinced about NFTs and Trump by the end of this thing.
And Trump, right. So then I remember a listener tweeting me like that he said that, and I was like, yeah, I saw that. What are you going to do? And she said, well, I don't think he should say that, or as do you. And I said, look, I'm not in the business of telling David Lynch what he should or shouldn't say, but at this point, I'm so in the bag for David Lynch that if he told me Trump was a great president, I'd probably just believe he was a great president. And I was thinking of that, right? Like maybe I'm going to get really into exactly as you said, like NFTs. Right?
NFTs.
What are NFTs for our naive listeners who aren't like us really into crypto?
Right. And NFT that stands for non-fungible token. And what it is it's using please don't email me with a correction. This is my best understanding of it. I know we
don't really care.
We have some engineers who listen to this, so I apologize. It's a digital asset, like a picture or work of art or whatever, that uses cryptography from the blockchain to essentially make it unique. So you have whatever it is, like a JPEG that's signed through I think it's the blockchain, but it's essentially just, there can only be one version of it. So it creates scarcity where, digital, the whole point of digital is that it can be copied infinitely. But this creates some scarcity. It gives you only one. There's only one work of art that has been digitally signed.
Even if it's identical digitally.
Yeah.
To every other version of it.
Exactly.
This is the one that can get auctioned off for like millions of dollars because it has that.
That's right. So you can't think of it as like the work itself being scarce. It's more akin to having a poster signed by somebody who only signs one poster ever. Right. So it's
except without the signature.
Except for without the signature. The signature is just a bunch of zeros and ones or whatever, like prime numbers.
They've never like gone anywhere near it.
Yeah.
I mean, or anywhere near that more than they've gone to all the other versions of it.
And it really shocks me as someone who's I'm somewhat of a nerd. I really like reading about the blockchain and about cryptography, and I own some cryptocurrency, and I just to fuck around with it. NFTs, it feels like the emperor's clothes. I feel like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is meaningless. It's worthless, and people are just on it. Like people who I otherwise respect are like, yeah, I'm creating an NFT for this, and I'm like, you're just fucking stupid now. Like, that's just dumb. I don't know.
I have to think that David Lynch just like has no idea what it is, and someone told him he could
make
turn
like
some
$100,000.
video of this band that he was already done, Interpol, and like, if we do it this way, you can get like $2 million for it.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, yeah.
It's like it really feels like the tulip craze in a way.
Are you telling me I can get $2 million for the same video? I'll do it.
Yeah, the same exact
It's
video.
a bad David Lynch.
I don't actually know what he sounds like. It's a money grab. Like, what? I guess, what do they even tell him? Like, is it even his fingerprint that created the cryptography? Like, I don't even know who does it, to be honest. Like,
it's a video that he did of this band that I've never heard of, Interpol, and their song Lights, and he's releasing like 8 videos of it, short videos that are being auctioned off for the NFT. What I'm asking is, though, like, when they encrypt it or whatever, when they create this, like, who even does some software engineer eating Cheetos, like, making David Lynch's NFT for him? Like, it actually is weird to me. So I just described like some process. So David Lynch at some point films a video of his band or whatever. Somebody films it. David Lynch has it. It's readily available on the internet. Probably. And maybe, yeah.
And some software engineer who's working for some startup who does NFTs for famous people decides to do the whole NFT, like, he creates the token or whatever it is that is done, and then puts it out. And David Lynch has just only agreed to it. That's the only role he has played in producing this novel new thing that can't be copied. So to sort of foreshadow our guest, Paul Bloom, Paul talks about in his book, where he talks about art, his book on pleasure, about sort of the reason that people buy things like, Britney Spears' chewed up bubble gum, or, George Clooney's sweater. Like, we really feel like the essence of the artist has somehow been carried over into the thing.
Right.
And that's
or just a real painting instead of a forgery
that's
that
right.
you couldn't tell the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if it's like atom for atom, the same exact paint, like in the same exact, you could emulate the brushstrokes. If it wasn't an original, the forgery, they'll burn the forgery. And that's because there was some contact between the artist and the work. And maybe that's rational, maybe it isn't. But for an NFT, it's like, well, you've not added the value of the essence of the artist. You've not, it feels weird. It feels dumb paying extra money for that.
It's funny with this because there's something about NFTs more than any other crypto thing that just gets people mad. And I sometimes say, just to for the hell of it, like, it raises interesting metaphysical questions, to people who should be receptive to that kind of thing, like what separates it? Is it ontologically different from other exact copies of it? And like, nobody wants to even talk about that. They're like, no, fuck that. It's so stupid. It's such an idiotic thing. And like, there's something about NFTs that antagonizes people. It just inspires a kind of hostility in others. That is,
I think it all boils down to, again, class warfare, because it really seems like, what, you don't have anything else to use your money on than to buy,
right.
like, spend $250,000 on the exact same digital work of art that has, like, what you're taking, by the way, on faith to be a unique digital signature. It's not like you have the ability to go and see whether this is actually like a unique token or whatever.
And you can't call yourself like a job creator or something like that.
Right.
Like, no, like, aside from the guy and his Cheetos, keeping him flush with Cheetos. But
and Mountain Dew. Poor neckbeard engineers. I'm sorry. I apologize for the stereotypes. Could be a woman. It could very well be a woman sitting there creating the NFT.
I mean, it could be. What's your credence that it's a woman? I mean, God bless David Lynch. If he can use it to bring this new project to fruition, which has been teased to us, and now it looks like it's not going to happen through Netflix, but it was going to be maybe a spin-off of Twin Peaks, or, he always keeps these projects so secret, but then it also got out on Reddit that the project had been suspended and that Netflix wasn't working with him anymore, so... he's just like a smoker. He's in his mid-70s. It's hard to tell with him because he's always so weird. Yeah. But is he slowing down? Is he getting some sort of creeping dementia? You just will never know. We'll never know until 5 years later. With
you can't tell the difference. You can't tell the difference between a script that he wrote with mild dementia and the regular script.
But he's such a singular artistic voice that I just give us something else.
Well, like we were talking about off air, there's sort of this extra David Lynch work that if you're a big David Lynch fan and you watch all his movies, you can then just go watch the original Dune. It's like a little bit of David Lynch that you never thought you could have.
I mean, I still have never seen that. I think it's the only film of his that I haven't seen.
And I've never seen it either. So he disavowed it or disowned it or whatever you say
because he got control taken away from him
because he didn't get final cut.
Yeah,
and he's never done an edit. He's never gone back to do.
No, I think once he was done with it, he was done with it. And then from then on, he only worked on projects. Even when he would direct a Twin Peaks episode, he had final cut for that. And he would...
interesting.
So, yeah, he did Blue Velvet. And that was kind of a success. And that just allowed him to do stuff through Fire Walk With Me, which even though it's a complete masterpiece, was not liked at the time. It's
people were angry. I really think that, this is almost obvious, but Twin Peaks was so ahead of its time that you wonder what it would have been like had he had an HBO or something backing him and backing his creative vision. People were upset about who the murderer was, and I feel like
David Lynch and Mark Frost did not want to reveal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. With the backing of something like an HBO, where they would be comfortable with that sort of ambiguity, you wouldn't have had to sort of ruin.
Yeah,
Twin Peaks is still great, but that part of Twin Peaks is the worst part.
Well, no, I think we actually just saw what would have happened if he had had full control on a prestige TV station.
I did not see it. Yeah,
you haven't seen it, but that's what was so cool about it is you got the full heroin Lynch as it was described, and it really was, and it was just so great in every way. I just put on a couple episodes the other day that because I was in a bad mood and I just wanted to sit there and just be awed.
Yeah. You're weird.
You really should watch it. I have to.
I need to watch it.
I have to figure out a way to get you to watch it.
There's maybe we can watch it and I could do another bonus episode with you about it on the same topic.
But we were talking about this before, but Dave did a Patreon episode with upcoming guest Paul Bloom on an Star Trek episode called The Inner Light, which longtime listeners may remember. I have already talked about with Dave.
This was a Paul Bloom privilege. This is what he's earned through his influence in my life. Is that I was like, Paul, you want to do a bonus episode with me on Star Trek? He's like, yes, The Inner Light. And I was like, well, we already did.
No. That's incorrect. You forgot that we had talked about it
I thought
until later.
I stupidly had thought that that's the one I had done an episode with Barry Lamb. Yeah. And so I was actually insulting Barry. sorry, Barry, by being willing to redo an episode. But it's even more insulting that I forgot that it was you.
And for a main Very Bad Wizards, too.
Different perspective, different strokes.
Yeah, well, I hope it was good. I'll never listen to it out of just pure bitterness.
You were holding yourself back because of your deep Star Trek fandom. You were really curious what Paul had to say, but you're like, no, on principle, I won't listen.
Why do you think? You think it's a class thing that people just get mad about NFTs more than anything, and they don't even want to like reflect philosophically on what it means in any way? They just want to express how much they have contempt for it and everybody involved in them.
I think so, because the easy answer to why they don't want to talk about it is that it sounds dumb on paper. But I think that there's a lot of stuff that sounds dumb on paper that would never garner this resentment. And I think the news stories about these, Silicon Valley bros, collecting, they're now collectors of NFTs, and they'll pay like, $250,000, $500,000 for something. It just feels slap in the facey. When
and decadent, like a kind of like ugly form of just decadence.
Decadence is something that we actually should devote. It's an interesting concept, but decadence, because especially this all happened during the time when people were like struggling to feed themselves because of COVID, and these people are paying, and you're just like, what? It's a JPEG. It's not like, it's not like it's an extra high quality version of the thing. It's not like I can't see it. It's you
can like Google image it and
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that said, we're introducing a new Patreon tier at the $10,000 per episode level, where we have an NFT for each for your favorite episode. You'll get an NFT of it.
That's right. That's right.
If you do it for a year,
might as well try. It could be. Should it be an episode? Should it be a picture, like one of our Montana
us
photos?
Playing cornhole in Montana?
That sounds so gay.
Exactly. We already said, one of my friends was making fun of me that we said that we were lying on the bed together watching Cachet.
I'm not ashamed.
Me neither. Like, what were we supposed to do? It was a bedroom. That's where the TV was, Yeah, and we love each other.
Exactly.
In this day and age.
All
right. Should we...
Yeah, who else I love?
Paul Bloom. We had a fun conversation with him, and we'll be right back.
This episode of Very Bad Wizards is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Check out betterhelp.com/VBW. I was just talking to a colleague of mine, and we were talking about how many people are having trouble coping with the return to normal, with going back to business as usual. And it's something that people don't talk about very often to each other because it's expected of us. We're all supposed to be feeling like, oh, we're happy that things are going back to normal. But many of us are actually filled with depression and anxiety and stressed out to no end. Well, if you're feeling like that and need somebody to talk to, BetterHelp might be for you. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't actually want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. These are licensed professional therapists who are trained to deal with the sorts of problems that you or I might be having. There are therapists across all 50 states, worldwide. You can access it from anywhere at your convenience. So, unload the stressors, get some unbiased feedback about the stuff that's going on in your life, and you'd be pretty surprised at what you might gain from it. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Very Bad Wizards listeners get 10% off of their first month at betterhelp.com/VBW. That's BetterHelp.com/VBW. Our thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode of Very Bad Wizards. Welcome back to Very Bad Wizards. This is the time of the show where we like to take a moment and thank all of our wonderful, dear listeners. We really appreciate all of the interaction that you have with us, all of the emails that you send, like emails that throughout the last, 8-9 years, sometimes just make my week. So please, even though we're bad at responding, if you want to reach out to us, you can. verybadwizards@gmail.com. If you want to tweet to us, you can tweet to us at verybadwizards or at Tamler and at Peas. If you would like to join in a discussion with some of your fellow listeners and occasionally with us, you can go to Reddit, to our subreddit, reddit.com/r/verybadwizards, where you'll find a growing community of cantankerous fucks. And you can please check out our Instagram. You can also comment there and actively interact with all of the listeners.
Did you see the Persona Instagram shot that I did?
Yeah. Did you do
My
that?
daughter. No,
I was going to
Eliza
say,
did.
yeah. I assumed it was Eliza who did that.
I'm not capable of doing that.
It was a wonderful Photoshop job. She's going places, that girl.
Let's hope. Or let's hope not.
So yeah, Instagram, listen to us and rate us on Apple Podcasts. We always enjoy that, preferably a good,
And it helps
good
us.
rating, and it helps
5-star review.
and a review, and it helps us find new listeners. And you can subscribe to us on Spotify, and I think that might help other Spotify listeners hear about us as well. So feel free to post anytime for new people to find us. Share with your friends.
Yes, thank you so much. I totally agree with Dave that it is heartwarming in a literal sense to receive all your emails and various ways you interact with us. And if you would like to support us in more tangible ways, which is also beautiful, heartwarming, and something that drives us to keep this podcast going after, in our 10th year.
Yeah.
You can give us a one-time or recurring donation on PayPal. You can go to the support page on our website where all of these opportunities are listed. You can find our merch, our T-shirts, sweatshirts, little baby suits, coffee mugs, and then finally you can become one of our treasured patrons, our Patreon supporters. We just put out a bonus episode for our Patreon listeners on the great Sopranos episode. It's one of our favorites, Pine Barrens, if not our favorite. Pine Barrens. That was a fun conversation.
That was super fun.
So, if you join at the $2 and up per episode tier, you will get access to a whole library of bonus episodes that we've done. Now, it's quite a collection. At $5 and up, you get access to Dave's intro psych lectures that he's releasing once a month. You get to select an episode topic that from a series of finalists that we'll choose from all of our Patreon supporters. At $10 and up.
Oh, and the Brothers Karamazov.
Oh, and you also get the Brothers Karamazov series, which it's a 5-part miniseries that we did. Not NFTs, but they still valuable, at least to us. And we were very proud of that. And so if you're a Dostoevsky fan and want to listen and read along, you can do that.
Somebody described our podcast as actually the ultimate existential podcast and listed off.
It's true.
Yeah, and I actually had never thought about it that way, but it's just true that we've been influenced by existentialist thinking.
We've done so many episodes on those kinds of questions, like the absurd, and they just went through it, like A Serious Man.
Yeah.
Is a movie that has deeply existential themes.
Ecclesiastes, Job.
Yep. Yeah. No, we are the one of the top existentialist podcasts.
At least top 5, the top 5 philosophy, existential pop culture podcast.
Yeah, $10 and up, you get, which is a new tier. You get to ask us anything, and we will respond in a video format. At least that's how it is for now. We'll see if we stick with that for the $10 and up. So far, we've recorded 2 videos that I thought were fun, at least for us.
Yeah.
Hopefully for them. It could be that people run out of questions.
Right. Join, even if you join temporarily. I know Tamler doesn't like me saying this. Just join temporarily. Give us a question. Wait till we release the video. Just feed us some new questions.
Yeah, give it. And then you can go back to the previous level. And every level that Patreon will allow you to join for, you get ad-free episodes as well. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate all of your support and all of your interaction. Let's get to Paul Bloom.
Okay, we're back with, I dare say, my favorite Very Bad Wizards guest, the fifth Beatle, Paul Bloom, who is now, I have to change the introduction, who is formerly the Brooks and Suzanne Regan. The first time I get it right, you're no longer the Brooks and Suzanne Regan professor at Yale University. You are now a professor at University of Toronto and emeritus at Yale University. And we are delighted to have you on. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, thank you both for having me back.
Thank you for slumming it here with us. Like, normally you're on like Hoover Institution affiliated podcasts. But,
he's like on Dax Shepard. Like he went on Dax Shepard. Who are we? Who are we?
I'm not going to forget my friends, you know?
The little people.
I don't care. You guys aren't that important or that special. I love you anyway.
We used to be your favorite thing on the internet, and now we
barely
I used to be so proud when I was on your podcast. It was like really something.
That was a rough time. That was when you hit bottom.
Yeah. And I remember that, I don't forget that you were kind to me when my career wasn't doing well and this was all I had. You are still, this is still my favorite podcast, and you guys have quite a lot of impact.
Thank you. I know that if I were a behavioral economist, I'd say revealed preferences is what determines whether or not we're your favorite podcast. And given that you're here to talk to us in part about your book, I can say that your revealed preference is clearly for Laurie Santos's podcast, because that's the only podcast that you mentioned in your book.
Well, I'll answer this very seriously. I do recommend Laurie's podcast. It's the one recommendation in my book. But it's a book about happiness and suffering and pleasure. If I write a book on obscenity, I don't know whatever you guys do.
So, okay, I want to start with saying your new book is called The Sweet Spot, The Pleasures of Suffering and the Search for Meaning. But before we get there, I'm going to put a link to this book because we have a little bit of a in discussion about how good podcasts are for book sales. And I want to show Paul that our audience actually buys books. So we're going to put the Amazon link to Paul's book in the show notes. So if you care at all about the future of Tamler and my podcast, use that link to buy it.
Or at least if you care about Paul ever coming back on our podcast.
Okay, in all seriousness, how many podcasts do you think you will have been on by the time you're done?
I don't know, 20?
Wow. Tamler, remember when you and I started, there weren't even 20 podcasts.
I know. We were one of 3 podcasts in the world.
It's weird, though, with the exception of 1 or 2 very bad ones where, somebody just reads out questions they got. They're all different. It's just talking to different people about different things.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, and actually, Dave, I thought we were going to talk mostly about the book. At least that's what I'm prepared to do.
We are prepared to talk mostly about the book.
But it's true that we never do that. And, if you're a publicist listening to this is the exception. It's really only Paul and maybe like a Robert Wright because,
and we had Bob Frank on because, we love Bob Frank too.
A lot of exceptions you got there.
Well,
it's just white men. It's just white men.
Yeah. It's not like we've had Mia Srinivasan or anything like that.
She'd be great.
No, believe me, the invitation is out, actually.
To see her on your podcast, I would die happy. It'd be a really interesting discussion.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Hopefully, we can do both you living and us having her on at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, so to talk about stuff that's not in the book, inspired by a somewhat controversial tweet, we thought it might be an interesting discussion to ask you, Paul, and then come up with some of our own answers. If you had one question to ask a potential date, so this is a dating profile, you put one question that you think might separate the kind of person you want to be with, you want to spend the rest of your life
the
with.
wheat from the chaff.
The wheat from the chaff. You have one question that will separate those, that will be answered honestly. What would your question be?
Yeah. So maybe this is the obvious one that everybody goes to. Imagine a Star Trek transporter works in the following way. It scans your molecular structure, destroys it, and creates a duplicate. Is this something you'd go into and feel your personal identity was sustained, or is it a murder machine?
So what are you looking for in an answer? Because I feel like your current partner has a very different answer than what I thought you...
So this is my second point. Because yes, my partner, I'm going to say my current partner.
Your partner for now.
Yeah, my partner for
Your
now
partner at time A.
has a notably different view about this. She has a very different view about consciousness and identity. And yet I love her nonetheless, and I'm extremely happy. And this is my meta comment, which we're going to talk about other examples in other cases. But thinking that this is going to work is a terrible idea because we are surprised. And our views about what's a deal breaker, particularly in a question like this, people find themselves in love, in wonderful relationship with people they would have never accepted if they first went through a dating site.
You're saying you're okay dating like a racist white supremacist is what you're saying.
Yeah.
As long as it's a surprise.
Well, yes, that's right.
Do you have any fashy crushes? Like,
an analogy is houses. You know, I've looked for a lot more houses than I've looked for romantic partners. And you think you know what you want. And then you find a house and you say, wow, this is next to an elementary school and it doesn't have a yard, but the deck is amazing. And, you know, you get surprised.
so,
Yeah.
Paul, I know things are going great between you and your current partner, but let's say they hit a rough patch and then
My 2021 partner.
your 2021. Yeah, late 2021.
At the time of this recording.
And let's say you hit a rough patch and you just decide it's not working, and then you get in a transporter, and then you're transported somewhere else. You know, she comes try like, what's the deal? Like, we can work this out. And you're like, no, it's not me anymore, right? So that's kind
right.
of a way to negotiate
Yes.
that.
Yes, that's the way. That's right.
I know. I'm convinced that I would never date Tamler Summers.
So that's your question. Are you Tamler Summers?
No, my real question would probably just be, will you date me? I think that would separate the wheat from the chaff right away. Okay. Tamler, do you have a question?
Well, see, I didn't know we were going to do this now, but I've been off the dating market for a long time, to the point where like there were no dating apps when I was still
right. There were only
looking.
dating cassette tapes.
And, you know, the Ashley Madison leaks didn't, as far as I know, find anything. So, but like my brother has been. And based on his reports, like, I feel like I would need to ask, like, what level of, like, physical violence I would need to do to her to, like, for her to feel aroused and turned on. Because it seems like they start the bidding at, like, choking and biting. And then it just escalates from there. In terms
This is your
of,
commentary on millennial sexuality. You think they're all into BDSM.
Yeah, and like, I don't want to bite somebody, you know?
But you will choke them.
I mean, if I have to, I guess. But, you know.
As Paul repeatedly says in his book, consensually.
In quotes, consensually.
My level of violence is the silent period, but only for short periods. And that's my maximum level of violence and cruelty. The silent treatment.
The silent treatment. Yeah.
Diana Fleischman, a friend of mine, and maybe yours, Paul, did a series of polls on Twitter in which she asked people if what would you prefer, a very long, after a fight with your girlfriend, a very long period of silent treatment, or one slap in the face and then everything goes back to normal.
That's such a good question. I remember when that was on there.
Yeah. Did you respond?
Yeah.
I would take a slap in the face.
I would take a slap in the face in a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the problem to slap in the face. To be hit by somebody, it's very hard not to respond with violence.
Unless you're a hard-boiled noir detective, you know, they get kicked in the ass all the time. I actually, I don't think I would ever be tempted to slap back. In fact, I have been slapped by a woman, and I was so shocked I didn't even think to slap back.
Say more about that.
It was interesting. I was young. It was I was in. I didn't even know what the argument. I found myself in an argument with another woman from my school. I must have been in 7th grade, and she was an 8th grader. And I don't know. To this day I don't know why she got mad at me and slapped me in the face. And I was just in shock. And
So if it was a man, it would have been different.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I would have hit back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's really disrespectful.
Yeah.
A slap.
Slap. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah. They'd want to take off their gloves and do that thing. Then you have to do a whole duel.
Hey, this is about your book, not mine.
That's right.
Yes,
All right, well,
it's an honor. A thing of honor.
So my sincere answer to the dating question would be some sort of question to tap in. And I know this is controversial given that you wrote a book called Against Empathy, Paul. But it would be some sort of question to assess how compassionate the person was. So it would be, or how much empathy they had. So two possibilities. One, an assessment of cognitive empathy. And for that, I think it would be interesting to do that task that, I don't know who developed it, but where you ask people to draw an E on their foreheads with their fingers. So just take your finger, put it on your forehead and draw an E or write an E. And you see whether they have written it for themselves, from their perspective, it's an E, or whether they have written it for the external perspective. And this is presumably some sort of measure of perspective taking. I think that would, if that task is true, I think that would be a really nice and easy way. Because I only want to be with people who are compassionate and taking of the other person's perspective.
Kindness is a good criterion.
Yeah. The other one might be like, would you, how reluctant would you be to open a link that you were told was a video of a beheading? I think that you should feel a lot of compunction. There are people who say, of course, yeah, I'd look at it.
Really? Are there a lot of people that you date that say, well, yeah, let me see that link. Let me see that beheading?
No, because I've separated the wheat from the chaff. So I think a lot of people...
You may be selecting away from curiosity.
That's true.
That kind of curiosity takes... you talk a little bit about this in your book, Paul, about seeing things that you don't want to talk about, or that you say somewhere. I don't remember if it was reading the descriptions of violence or watching it, stuff that you wouldn't want to actually discuss or describe with other people or watch again. Is that right?
I mean, everybody has their own flavor of unpleasant experiences, and I talk a lot about it. But some I don't really share myself, and extreme gore or violence just isn't for me. Yeah, I like scary movies. I like, thrillers and so on, but really gory movies are just too unpleasant for me. But some people get a lot of pleasure from them.
But there's also,
and I don't think that these are bad people.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between a real life beheading and a movie beheading too. I don't have a problem with a movie beheading. I would have a problem doing a real life beheading. I mean, this is why, and it's bad, but I don't look at factory farm videos and stuff like that. I can't do it. But that's because this is what's really happening.
What's the problem you have with real life beheadings?
It's just, I don't know. You mean
is it too upsetting, or is it a moral thing?
It's, I don't know. Maybe it reminds me of man's inhumanity to man, or, but I don't know why exactly. I never really thought about why I don't like it, but I really don't like to see real life violence that's not in a constrained setting.
Yeah.
Is it Tamler, the person on person nature of it? Because there are these, if you're on Reddit long enough, people will refer to these very well-known videos of real deaths. So there used to be a subreddit called Watch People Die. And there's one video I've never seen, and I hope to never see it, but it is a man who gets caught in a lathe in a factory and dies a terrible death. So there's no violence to speak. It's just gore.
He's just a klutz, and then
and then ends up dying. And
I could see myself dying that way, actually.
But would that bother you more or less, or the same?
Less. Yeah. So it is something about the fact that there's an intention. Even with factory farms, maybe it's a massive corporation or something like that, but it's this suffering that is being intentionally inflicted. I wouldn't want to watch people dying. I have no interest in watching that. I'm not curious to see that kind of stuff, but I think it would still be less unpleasant, or I'd be less averse to that than the other thing.
for me, so much of the physicality of it, that's the problem. That's what would be upsetting and unpleasant. You know, I might watch on the news or something a bomb landing in on a building and blowing it up. And I remember actually having with a lot of people a fascination with the September 11 attacks and watching that a few times and sort of getting all sorts of emotions. But it wasn't as viscerally upsetting to watch some guy, getting cut apart in a factory.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is getting off to a really sunny start.
Who would date us?
Yeah, exactly.
Based on us.
One thing I think, you can't really ask this, you just have to know it. But I feel like the best way to know if you're going to be good with somebody is if you travel well together. If you travel well together, then you're going to have, then there's hope for your relationship. If you don't, I think it's a real problem.
It accelerates a relationship. A week of travel is like 6 months at home.
Yeah. This is one of the things that I learned from about my daughter early on, because I traveled a lot. Her mom and I split up when she was very young, and I would often travel across country with her. And she was always so calm and chill during the traveling that I now look forward to. We went to Peru one summer together, and it was just such a fun trip. And in part, it was because her neuroticism was so low about the trip that it was like we could just sit in silence for long periods of time on public transportation and not feel the need to complain about anything. And it really, to me, that's one of my favorite parts of her personality, is just how,
We can answer the question by going through the big 5 personality scale. And for neuroticism, low is a really good answer.
Yeah.
All right, maybe it's time for all of us to get back out there.
I've despite my jokes before, I have found a woman of my dreams, and there are attributes of that you can't get from short experiences and from polls and so on. The feeling of being understood, being able to talk to the person.
So maybe the lesson is there isn't a question that you can ask to separate the wheat from the chaff. Yeah.
Well, I think there's some deal breakers.
Yeah.
Right. Do you like straw dogs? Today's episode is brought to you by chess.com, a sponsor that I am so proud to have, and I just get excited. One of the few spots that we do that I just get excited to do.
Your dream. It's your dream sponsor.
It's my dream sponsor. Just because I've been a part of chess.com in my entire professional career. And it's a way I play chess with friends. It's a way I play chess with my brother. And now it's a way I play chess with some listeners. I'm getting a lot of challenges.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I don't accept all the challenges sometimes because their ratings are too low, and if they beat me, my rating will plummet. So, and also just because I don't have the time to play a lot of people, but I've been playing a few, and that's been really rewarding, except when I get my ass kicked, which I did recently. Just got crushed by a listener, and it wasn't even crushed. It was worse. It was just they chipped away at me and kind of humiliated me.
I wish I could know enough and see it.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing with chess.com and at the various levels of membership, and I now have a diamond membership, you can go through an analysis of every move, and I did that, and I learned every single time I made a little mistake or a little inaccuracy or at time or 2 blunders. I made 2 blunders.
Unforced errors, like in tennis. Is it?
Yeah, it's a little like that, and it tells you that this was a bad move. It tells you, and it tells you why, but then it also shows you what a better move was, and then you can go onto that thread, and it'll play out. Had you done this move? So it's like this alternate universe where you were better at chess than you actually are.
It's like a Ted Chiang story. It's like
exactly. I wish I could communicate with the version of me that didn't make that blunder or that made the best move. And there's just there's these puzzles that I have been doing. I've done almost 40,000 of them. And I still enjoy them, still do them when I'm on the pot, still do them when I want to procrastinate and not feel awful about myself like the other forms of procrastination that I do. It's great. You can join for free, but at these other levels of membership, you get unlimited puzzles, you get unlimited analysis and deep analysis. But at every level, including the free level, you can play people and enjoy the game. It's a really nice interface. It's really it's easy to use, and I love it. So join chess.com. Help us keep chess.com as a sponsor by going to chess.com/verybad and start playing. That's chess.com/verybad. No wizards, just chess.com/verybad to start playing your friends, your family, maybe even me, and maybe Dave if he can brush up on his game and learn chess today. They also have a great series of lessons, too.
I was going to say the coupon code might just be a reference to my chess playing ability.
Maybe that's right. Thank you to chess.com for supporting this episode.
Tamler, do you want to start talking a bit about the book? So Tamler and I both actually read the whole book, which is a great compliment.
I'm touched.
Yeah.
I want to get this out of the way because I want to say it, and everybody knows I admire Paul quite a bit. But as I was reading this book, I was just, again, kind of in awe at how good a writer you are. And part of that is saying it for you to feel good, for people to know about it. But part of you also is just like, I'm curious about like how you view your own writing and how like you've, over the course of how many books have you written now?
6.
Yeah. I feel like you get better each time. Maybe not each time, it's hard to gauge, but do you see that?
Thank you. I'm really touched. I think writing's gotten a little bit easier for me in some ways. I'm not sure if I've gotten better. Sometimes I end up, going to an older book like, Just Babies or whatever to try to extract something or quote something. And I say, oh, that just sounds like me.
Yeah.
But I work at it. And, the standard things. I read a lot from writers I admire. And then my writing is very difficult, and I write and I rewrite and over again. And I send drafts off to friends, and they give me a lot of comments. And then for some of my stuff, editors are also a big help.
Yeah, it's great. It's just alive. The writing in this it leaps off the page, as they say, and it's like it's fun. You. Yeah, my favorite line when you describe the girl in The Exorcist. In that scene, and that her head is swiveling like a dreidel. I love that line.
Gotta get some Jewish content in there somehow.
That's all I need is a little Jewish content, and I'm happy.
David pointed out I have a quirk in all my books. There's a sentence over and over again I always use in all of my books, and it is a history. The sentence is, "This is not small potatoes," and the history is that our first publication together. David and I wrote a critique of John Haidt, a friendly critique of John Haidt, and we had a line in it about something saying this is important. We said this is not small potatoes, and the editor said that we had to remove it because I think because foreign speakers wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, I believe, and it was Walter Mischel who was the editor.
Yes, great field in psychology.
And I believe
scholar.
I believe he actually said this wouldn't translate well into Chinese, and he was using it as an example of the general point. But yeah,
it is idiomatic.
Yeah. So when I saw that sentence, I was tickled, and I texted you because ever since, Paul was so angry when Walter Mischel made us take that out of the paper, that it is a level of pettiness that is rare in Paul. He's just not that kind of a person, and it's hilarious to me that.
So now you're just. To get revenge, you're peppering your books with "This is not small potatoes."
People talk about trauma. This is like the world's strangest revenge film, where I write books in order to put the sentence in there.
Instead of a puppy, your John Wick story is the sentence got cut from that.
That's right. And instead of killing a lot of people, I write books and I put in the sentence, and it goes fine. The body keeps the score.
All right, so should we talk about it? I mean,
yeah.
So this one, after Against Empathy, which, one can only call contrarian, counterintuitive, like against the grain, deeply immoral. This one seems, and maybe this is just something about me, this one seems like it's more fleshing out beliefs and intuitions that we have already. You're not trying to shock us or make us rethink something deep. It's more that you're trying to get us to think more deeply about all the different values that are important to us and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. On the face of it, this could be seen as another contrarian book. I wrote a book against empathy. Now I'm writing one in favor of suffering, and it's just more, stirring the pot. But you're right. My last book was basically, the subtitle could be "You're Doing It Wrong," and it talked about, a moral practice we all think is good and arguing it's bad. This really is sort of systematizing and exploring some common sense ideas.
Yeah.
We do seem to take pleasure in suffering sometimes. What's up with that? We do seem to relate suffering and meaning. How does that go? How does that work? And it really is, it isn't telling people to do something different. It's not a critique. It is, as you're saying, it's exploring some facts about human nature, which I think people broadly accept. And there's a lot to disagree with about the book, but it's not pugnacious like my last book.
Yeah. And I guess the contrasting position, if to try to pick one, it would be Dan Gilbert's.
Yes.
And his kind of version of psychological egoism. But I think he's the one with the weird view there, not you.
Yeah. Dan, more than just about anybody else, was a useful person to talk through the book. He never commented on a book itself, but we had an email dialogue going on for many years about this, where he's a hardcore hedonist. He thinks what I'm saying is just bullshit. The idea of seeking after meaning or morality it's just bullshit. It's confused bullshit. All there is pleasure.
Yeah.
And we should just be trying to maximize pleasure. And it was fun. In my book, at points I directly addressed Dan. And Dan is probably the person I cite the most because I love his research. But yeah, he's the guy I'm disagreeing with.
He's the foil. Yeah.
He's the foil.
The idea that might be controversial here for a lot of people, which you and I talked about this, Paul, a little bit, post-traumatic growth doesn't really happen the way that people think it do. And so the idea is that, some people say, well, after trauma, you become a better person. You grow in ways that you couldn't have otherwise. And this is not to say that people should go through trauma, but only that there is this very wonderful psychological process that makes you a better person afterwards. And you say that it's not even that the jury's out. It's that there's no good evidence. Like trauma is just trauma and it fucks you up. And what might be happening is just people who respond to these kinds of questions just say that they've become a better person and maybe even believe it, but there's no good evidence that it's because of their trauma. And I'm tempted in some cases to say that seems like something maybe perhaps about all suffering. I mean, there seems like you could separate the cases in which we're motivated to try to feel pain for some reasons, but the suffering aspect, there is so much sort of post-hockiness to explaining our suffering that it's hard to tell when it actually is something valuable and when it's just something we've convinced ourselves that is valuable.
It's a really good point. I mean, I'm very critical. My book is all about chosen suffering. And I'm very critical of the claim that unchosen suffering, just bad shit that happens to you, you get assaulted, your child dies, you lose your job, that's going to make you happier or have a richer life. We're very resilient, and resilience is the good news. But I think claims about growth are overstated. But now you could turn around and say, well, all of these cases where people choose suffering and say, wow, I'm a better person and I'm happier and have meaning, maybe that's the same sort of after the fact storytelling.
Right, because a lot of the suffering that people choose, and it's not like you don't say this a lot, is instrumental. So
yeah.
So you write a book and you spend hours and hours going through all sorts of negative emotions, and it's chosen suffering, but it's not that you chose the suffering; it's that you chose to write a book.
I think that's right, and I actually don't disagree with it. My claim, so I have two main claims in the book. One is that often we use suffering to enhance pleasure, and that's just a fact. And I try to explore what goes on for that. And that's sort of suffering because it's fun, and hot baths and scary movies and all that. But suffering in the pursuit of meaning is kind of complicated. And I think here's the wrong way to look at it. The wrong way to look at it is somebody says, I want to train for a marathon, and I'm going to get blisters, and I want to get blisters, and I'm going to have some days where I'm sick, and I might fail, and I love that. I think when people seek out these long-term meaningful projects, they actually don't really look forward to the suffering. They don't want it. But
Right.
my point is,
It comes with the territory, yeah.
it comes with it, right? That a meaning, we intuit correctly, I think, that a project that we would deem to be meaningful is going to come with suffering and pain. And there's just no way they come as a package.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and in fact, a lot of that, one thing I really liked in your discussion about flow, which I don't know, Dave, if we've ever talked about that at length, but flow states being where you just lose track of time, the boundaries between you and what you're doing, you and your activity just start to get like blurry. You're just in the zone, and that's about as pleasurable a state as you can be in. So why don't we seek it out more is the question you ask in the book. Like why are we not just constantly pursuing these flow states? And one of the things you say is a lot of the suffering to get to a point where you can be in a flow state comes early. Yeah. So you really have to like go through a lot of frustration and just lack of fulfillment to get, if you're going to be a great musician, to get to the point where you can just be on there on your saxophone just riffing and like you would have to go through so much. And a lot of us just don't have the stomach for that. I think that strikes me as totally right, that the hard part of a lot of pleasurable activities, a lot of the suffering is weighted towards the beginning of that.
I think that's right. And I think it's right on 2 time scales. So one time scale is a long one where as a musician or an athlete or a scholar, to be able to get to a flow state, you have to do a lot of work beforehand. If I'm really out of shape and I start running down the street, I'm not going to immediately find myself in flow. I'm going to have to get in better shape before I'm getting in flow, as opposed to just, feeling like an idiot and hurting a lot. And then there's the immediate part of it, which is, suppose I am in a phase where if I go to the gym, I'll get a lot of it. I'll be an hour in flow. But right now I'm sitting on the sofa and I'm watching Netflix and I have,
right.
Corn chips in front of me. And it's tough. It's tough to get out of there. There's sort of a local minima where in order to get to the higher place, you got to kind of go through some unpleasantness. And and here my book is entirely dad's advice, which is well, you got to get up, you got to do things, you got to take on these hard projects. But I think it's true, and I think the pleasures and value of flow, it's tough to get there. Csikszentmihalyi, who did most of the work on this, has done surveys where he asked people about experiences in flow states, and a surprisingly large number say they've never got there in their whole life.
Yeah, I was struck by that. By the way, rest in peace, Mallory Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah, about a week ago he passed away.
Yeah, I was thinking I was lamenting that I don't think I experience flow very often in my life anymore. And
Did you used to?
I used to feel like I was in flow when I was reading good shit is when I would feel it. Like when I was I remember when I was first studying psychology and a little philosophy and a little cognitive science, just really feeling like I felt in the zone when I was reading. And I don't know if reading quite gets there. A few times when I was really in shape in basketball, like I had actually trained really hard one summer to be able to have the stamina to play games. For a long time, I remember feeling it then, but neither of those. It's so sad.
You run. Does that give you a state of flow?
If I'm in shape enough, yeah. If you get past the point where it's where you're not out of breath and your muscle, there is this sweet moment when the proximal discomfort is no longer my legs and my inability to keep running. It's just like actually it starts being like your actual stamina, like to keep pounding sort of the pavement. It's not that I'm out of breath and my legs hurt. It's just this like fatigue, and that feels good to get. And that's the kind of pain that feels good to me, like that you push through because you're succeeding at this thing. And
I remember a point when I was in good enough shape when I was training for marathon where I could basically run, not fast, but I could run for as long as I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an incredible.
And then you kind of push it.
Yeah.
And that was
I
great.
need competition.
What
I
about
need
you?
to be playing a sport. Like I've been playing tennis like every week for the last couple of years, but I need something like in front of me. I hate running. Like I don't mind, like I'm fine with running and playing tennis or basketball. I hate running just for running because
You find it boring?
Yeah, and also like really unpleasant, you know.
Yeah.
But I've never been a runner. Like I've run some 5Ks and trained for that. But I think I would never like it. I don't think I would get to a point where I was that it was something pleasurable or addictive or anything like that. I always dreaded it. I dreaded it just as much when I was in better shape as when I was in bad shape. Like it just sucked always. Yeah.
You know, I used to get flow out of writing,
Yeah.
and now I don't. You know,
Yeah.
my style for writing is I write for an hour each morning, and not necessarily an hour straight. I could do 10 minutes writing, then move to 10 minutes of email. You know, and I write, and I look at the clock. I write a paragraph, and I see how much time has gone by. And it is a source of satisfaction and meaning, maybe because it's really hard, and I feel it rewarding, and it ticks off all the boxes of a meaningful activity, but it's not a flow activity for me.
Yeah. I mean, not me either. Yeah.
I do. Now that I think about it, I do when I make beats, like I do for this show, I do get into a flow state. It's just that, as you guys were saying, I have to get myself to the point where I can devote like an afternoon to doing it, and then I can get sucked in. But getting there, just getting yourself to do it sometimes is so aversive, and particularly when your days are filled with bullshit like emails and, you know, administrative meetings, and then you're just tired. And this is the time when we should be running and maybe doing something pleasurable, but all you want to do is just sit and browse, you know, Reddit on your phone or YouTube or something.
I wonder if it's harder now to get to flow states because we're so overstimulated with so many other things, and there's always something like we could be doing on our phones or on the computer or whatever. Like I that wouldn't surprise me if people were.
I think definitely. I think boredom used to be a great motivator.
Yeah.
To get up and do something, because otherwise you have to sit still. You know, in the evenings I read books because I'm old enough that I remember a certain time there was no TV.
Well, didn't your family gather around the radio?
Then there's the Bible readings. That was important.
The burnings of the witches, of the suspected witches. Yeah.
You know, there's this quote from the head of Netflix who says, you know, we don't compete against Amazon or Hulu. We compete against sleep. And I think Facebook and Twitter and the like, they don't compete against each other. They compete against life.
Yeah.
They want you there and not working out, not raising your kids, not doing long-term projects.
Not
They want
reading
you there
novels, you know.
Yeah, not reading novels. That's right.
There is a kind of like pseudo flow that some of these things give you, like scrolling through Reddit, where they've really tapped into one aspect of the flow, which is you sort of lose track of time. But at the end, you've not done anything worthwhile. But it's very easy to get yourself into that position. So like at the end of the day, you know, you sit on your bed and you're scrolling through your phone, and you bring up this theory that I actually love, the Rob Kurzban paper on the fact that we have the opportunity cost, right? The other activity that we could always be doing is this low effort, medium reward activity of going to the next video on YouTube or scrolling through more headlines on the front page of Reddit, or as the kids do, scrolling through the next TikTok videos. Like, it's just good enough to keep us doing it, but it's so easy that it's the first thing that we can easily do at the end of a day or something.
I never thought of it that way before, but it's like flow is always defined as this good, rewarding, powerful thing. But social media gives us, you know, shitty flow.
Yeah.
And for me, like,
Sounds like diarrhea.
Okay, we'll figure out a better name. Unrewarding flow.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
You know, I pick up my phone and I go on Facebook because I have Twitter off of my phone because otherwise I'd be a goner. And I'm trying to go to sleep, but I pick up my phone and just scroll through Facebook. And then I get to the movies part. Like, I open up and click on a little movie, and it's a skit from Saturday Night Live or something. Then it's a movie trailer. And by now the algorithm knows just what I want.
Yeah.
And then I put down the phone and an hour has passed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like an hour has passed. And unlike real flow, where you have a feeling of reward and satisfaction and accomplishment, this just gives you shame.
Yeah.
It's flow in that you lose track of time, but it's not pleasurable. Like, it doesn't give you that feeling
Of mastery.
Yeah,
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, or even, because I don't think flow necessarily has to be mastery. It just has to be feeling like you're clicking on all cylinders in some way. You're fully engaged, body and mind. And it's not quite that. It's more like you're just taking a break from your own thoughts and anxieties and the things that you're just stressed about. And it just allows you to not be in your head about that stuff anymore.
That's right. It's a way of shutting down the voice inside you.
It is.
It's not meditation. It's nothing like that. It's just, and in that way, I think, it's not like an addiction. It really is an addiction in that a lot of addictions, when you're fully into it, don't give you any pleasure. They just give you a relief from anxiety.
Yeah, that's what this is. Unlike like the good addictions, like drugs.
Yes.
Yeah. No, yeah, but that's why I call it sort of pseudo flow, because there is some property of it where you can get lost in it, which is it's different than just like unwinding. I can get lost in. People have talked about this terrible experience of you finally click out of Twitter, and your fingers just go, like the next thing they do is open Twitter. Because
yes,
because you're so used to doing it. It's like the evil. It's like the dark side version of flow, and it's.
I like that pseudo flow.
You talk about boredom in the book, and we've become, I think, because there's so many ways to just immediately stop being bored, that we've become so intolerant of even just a moment of boredom. And so we'll immediately turn to that, and we don't realize that that's just building the habit to the point where we're barely even conscious of. I mean, there are these studies of people when they lift up their phone and check their phone, how often they do that. We're aware of doing it. We do it with the intention of doing that, like 10% of the time that we actually do it.
Yeah. There's an experiment by Dan Gilbert where his colleagues, where he gets people to give up their phone and go into a room for like 20 minutes. And the one rule is they can't fall asleep, but they have no reading materials or anything. And people hate that. They hate it. To get an idea of how much they hate it, in one experiment, people get to try to shock themselves with an electric shock machine. And they agree it's extremely unpleasant. But if the machine's in the room, they'll shock themselves just because it's something to do. And it's funny. And I wonder if he did experiments 50 years ago when, whether people would just say 20 minutes roaming in a room. Well, I'll just think about my life.
I do that all the time. No, it's funny. I'm not like that. I love situations where my phone is just non-functional, like if I'm camping or I'm on an airplane or something and I just can't use it. Yeah, I treasure it. Like, it's amazing. Like, I could have that all the time if I wanted to, but I don't do it. But yes, I really love that. And I have these like devices on my phone that shut it off and simulate that. But going camping or doing something where it's just the phone is no longer part of my life is super rewarding for me. Yeah.
I've always been interested in self-binding, using technologies or other ways to shut off opportunities your future self might want. Giving your car keys to your friends and they don't give them to me if I'm drunk. Flushing your cigarettes down the toilet and so on. But then there's the other question, which is it's very hard to self-bind.
Yeah.
And you almost need like I think people need like a Leviathan to come. If I could choose my supper in the morning, I would eat a lot healthier.
There is an aspect of self-binding. I did a project with an undergrad here who is doing her honors thesis on this, and it was situations in which self-binding is an option that people avoid because it communicates weakness.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
So we were looking at these scenarios where self-binding would be viewed as a negative. So imagine a bachelor whose friends say, we're going to throw you a bachelor party and we're going to go to a strip club. And he says, no, I don't want to go to a strip club because I might lose control and do something that would consider cheating on my. So make me promise that you're not going to take me to the strip club. Mm-hmm. And there it's like, well, really? Like, you're admitting that you would be so weak as to lose control in that situation. Whereas somebody who says, yeah, I can go, or like an alcoholic who says, let's not meet at any place that serves alcohol, versus one who says, yeah, we can meet anywhere you want, and then I'll just not drink. Seems to be some virtue in the ability to exert your will in the moment. And when it has like a moral flavor to it, you don't want to say, well, let's not go close to a playground because, I never know what I'm going to do around some kids. You'd be like, well, you really have to think about that? Like in your cool moments, you're thinking about losing control?
It depends on the thing.
Yeah, it depends. Maybe dieting is somewhat like that when you think that you ought to be able to control yourself in the moment.
And it's a shame because the one thing we know about change is that the way to change and the way to become a better person isn't just to try hard and exert self-control. It's to, you guys talked about William James at so much length and talked about his insights about habit, making things habit, which basically involves taking it away from the conscious self. And then the other thing is to orchestrate your environment, to do self-binding, to not, don't buy the jumbo size M&Ms if you're tempted to snack too much. And it's a shame that we disapprove of this, of people using these techniques, because they're the only things that work.
Yeah, I am all for self-binding, and when I can get myself to do it, which I can quite a bit, like it works. Like there's certain ice creams I can't have in the house because I'll just eat it until it's gone. And it's interesting. I was just thinking, I don't know if this is a mirror of what you were just talking about, Dave, but like, as someone who likes to drink, or especially like the biggest example of this was when I was taking a lot of Vicodin. And so like I'd go out to dinner with my wife and I would just pop a few Vicodin.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
She'd be like, and it was a really nice dinner and it was really great and we were going to have wine. So like, why do I need to take Vicodin? I was like, I don't need to take it, but it's just be like 15% like better, like on every level, everything will, but she found that there was something wrong about that. Like I should just be like happy without any aid.
You were maximizing pleasure. Like it's if you can. I remember, I remember when I had recently gotten divorced or split up, and as one does, I was exploring my sexuality with by meeting lots of people. And I remember a good friend of mine, this woman says, I think you're using sex as a way to just distract yourself from the emotional pain that you're having. And I remember saying, well, yeah, there's two options. I could have the emotional pain and not have sex, or I could have the emotional pain and have sex. And I don't know in anyone's calculus how it would be.
Do you think you guys should start an advice column?
Take Vicodin, have sex. No, but there's something like about the authenticity of what you're doing, I think. I don't know. I'm trying to get into this Protestant mindset that my wife has, but like something like it should be good without any aids. Meanwhile, she's just drinking like wine and doing all that. So it's bullshit. But I don't know. There is. I can conceptualize what she's saying. I understand it. Even
we should just be eating lukewarm Brussels sprouts. Am I not good enough? That you need like a ravioli.
but it's how to construe it. So to be fair to her, it's not like you say, well, what if I ramp up my pleasure 20%? Who are you to complain? It's more of the sort, well, I like hanging out with you. I like to be drunk and stoned when I do it.
Right.
Yeah. So in some way, it gets in the way of a better experience.
By the way,
or maybe the implication is I need this, or else it won't be fun.
Right, it's like coping. Right. Yeah. With that. Well, we know how Tamler feels about the Very Bad Wizards audience, given how much he drank and ate edibles before we met up with him.
Can we talk about some things small disagreements that I had with the book?
How dare you?
Yeah, no. Haven't you read the contract my publicist sent?
Tamler, we're in the acknowledgments. This is no
acknowledgments.
Yes, thank you.
No, go ahead, Tamler.
I have a disagreement about Sisyphus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't even think I mentioned. Do I mention Sisyphus in the book?
You do.
Okay.
I actually don't remember it.
It's in your when you talk about goals.
Yes.
So you write, it's easy to see talking about Sisyphus. You have to.
And my cover, by the way, the wonderful art director just put Sisyphus in there, and I love it.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
That's very clever.
So you write, it's easy to see why this is such an awful fate. There's no goal. He's never finished. When I read that, I thought, well, no, that's not right. There is a goal. Like the goal is to push the boulder to the top of the mountain. And then when he does that, it's finished. And then he has to go back and do it again. So there's just many goals. And I guess the reason, and then, he has to walk down the mountain. That's a goal, and then push it back up again. the reason I raise this not just as like a terminological thing, but I feel like that's Camus' point when he's talking about the myth of Sisyphus, is that we're all in some ways like Sisyphus, whether it's writing a book or whether it's we have these local goals that we have to come to terms with as being meaningful somehow and fulfilling somehow, or at least fulfilling enough for us not to take our own lives. So I think, like, to the extent that it works as a metaphor, it is something that is that has at its core a goal that can be completed, and it just happens to be that it's the same goal over and over again.
But it was chosen as a punishment. Maybe you're right. Maybe you could view this as a sequence of goals, and I was wrong to say it's not a goal. But it was chosen as a punishment because it sucks in a certain interesting way. Suppose instead Sisyphus was condemned to build houses of different sizes and shapes and ranch houses and beach houses as castles and so on. You wouldn't be so tempted to say, what a savage punishment, because there's more room for artistry. The goals are more interesting. So something about this, what you're saying might be right, but you have to sort of then articulate, what is it about Sisyphus's fate that makes it so terrible?
Well, I think, or at least as I understand what Camus is saying, what's terrible about it is that it's just a transparently kind of pointless task. Whereas we can trick ourselves into thinking that our tasks are, have some sort of ultimate purpose, and you can't.
So you're saying metaphysically,
we're
all Sisyphus.
So metaphysically, we're all Sisyphuses, but we can delude ourselves more easily than Sisyphus can about it. And so the key to conquering this is for Sisyphus to find, and this would be true of all of us, like to find purpose even in the most mundane tasks. You have to find ways for that to be fulfilling, and we don't do that. I take this as the goal of meditation a lot of the time, is to find some kind of almost flow-like state in the most ordinary kinds of situations imaginable, because you are appreciating, and the experience of being alive and having the experience you're having is enough.
Can I ask just a question about the myth? Is it that he's told that he has to get the boulder to the top of the hill? Like, is his goal constantly being thwarted? Or is he told that his job is to get it to almost the top and it will roll down, to get it to almost the top and it will roll down? Like, is he constantly failing, like, to get it over the ledge? Because it feels like that reads differently than if you're just like, time to roll the boulder, like the donuts guy, where that's just like a delineate. Like, in some ways he's succeeding every time in his task, if his only task is to get it to right before it rolls down.
I'm not sure if it's specified. That's a great question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought it was that he just has to push it to the top, and then it just rolls down once. Yeah,
but pretty soon he'd get the idea here. He'd say, "Hey, it's not staying." Oh, I see why this is a punishment.
And I don't even think he says, "This time it'll be different. Like, this time it'll just stay up there and they'll let me go." But yeah, and I also don't know what happens to him if he doesn't push it. What if he says, like, he goes on strike? I don't know what happens then either.
You could do this as a psychology experiment. You take original Sisyphus, and you have a modified Sisyphus where he simply has an infinite number of rocks at the bottom, and he has to push them one by one to the top. But if I had to choose, and at some level, what's the difference? But if I had to choose, I would definitely choose option B. Yeah. Because look at the pile. Look how many rocks are up there.
There is a comic book called The Preacher that they made a TV show out of, and the central sort of conceit of the show is this guy has what they call the voice of God. It's about the supernatural ability that whenever he says something, everybody has to do what he said when he uses this voice of God. And at one point he tells a guy to go count the number of grains of sand on a beach. And the poor guy is for the rest of his life condemned to counting grains of sand. And but at least there's a goal.
At least it's an ethos.
Yeah. And at some abstract level, Sisyphus, the sand counter, and us are all doing the same thing.
We're all the same thing. Yeah.
But it doesn't feel this way. If the preacher commanded a guy, okay, here's what I'm going to do. raise a family, a big family, and take care of them and have a job, a meaningful job, and help people, we wouldn't be saying, "Oh, what an evil curse."
That's just rolling the boulder with more steps. Yeah. That's, can I ask a question, sort of shifting gears? I realize that I have a question that I don't know the answer to, but I don't know what you think about it, which is there really any sort of deep relationship between pain and suffering? Or is it that we have made the mistake of equating two uncomfortable states? Because metaphorically, the way that we can best describe suffering is it's aversive, as if you were in pain. But you have all these examples of pain that's not particularly suffering, and suffering that's not particularly pain. And it seems like, well, maybe we've made a category sort of error here.
I assumed as I was writing the book that pain, unchosen pain, and anxiety and stress and emotional pain, humiliation, grief, all share something.
Yeah, and there is
that's what you're
attempts
pushing back against.
Well, not so much pushing back, but there has been these attempts to show that, like, and you talk a little bit about this, like that it's the same brain region involved in physical pain is involved in emotional pain, but
if it wasn't the same brain region, I wouldn't care. So
right, that's right, and I actually think those studies might be in question anyway. But it seems to me as if maybe because physical pain is so often aversive, we are just using this as a metaphor for the kinds of aversive experiences that are really suffering for humans. Because, I don't even know. There are plenty of times where I feel pain where it's not particular suffering. The suffering comes from anticipating it, I guess.
So some pain could be pleasant or neutral.
Flossing. I find that flossing and digging into my gums is it's a good pain.
I agree with that. So not all pain is suffering. Not all suffering is pain. But I think pain and these other things we're talking about share a certain quality. And I think one way to illustrate is what we were talking about before. So remember the Twitter poll. Would you rather get the silent treatment for 2 hours or get slapped in the face? That's a good question. You could sort of see feel a good question because they both suck. And it's the suckiness that I'm talking about, and that you could put them on a common scale that makes them think that they're similar.
I guess that's I think what I've started to doubt, because it's like, if pain is to pleasure what suffering is to flourishing, maybe. But it seems like the temptation to reduce things to a singular scale of pain, and here I'm almost making a Tamler point, and I feel deeply ashamed. But the thought that there is a common denominator, not common denominator. You and I have in print said that moral disgust is mere metaphor.
Yes.
But it's mere metaphor, not because there's nothing in common between feeling disgust and feeling that something was immoral, because there is something common, or else it wouldn't be a metaphor. There is this sense that you don't like it, you want to push away from it, you don't want to be around people who do it. But it's so not disgust that other languages might not make the same comparison between the feeling of disgust and the feeling of moral disapproval. And maybe one way of asking it is, if you asked people in the Foray tribe in the 1960s, you said, you smash your finger with a stone, you lose your child dies. Sort these experiences. Would they sort those into the same bucket?
Or even, the English word pain could be described for the loss of a loved one or for humiliation. That was what you said to me was really painful.
Right.
People make fun, maybe rightfully so, of the overextension of the word violence.
Yes.
To talk about hurt feelings.
Well, you've caused harm, and you've caused harm.
Yes, but it's not crazy. I mean, you see that you've caused harm. It would be really interesting if there are some languages which only restrict the word pain to physical pain and don't extend it.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Would be interesting.
There's a way to take, this is sort of a segue, but this is one of, you're accusing me of sort of bundling everything too much together into one thing of suffering. There's a different objection, which is an objection against the motivational pluralism, which putting them in different things. And Dan Gilbert didn't say this, but it was sort of sparked by a conversation, which is there's a certain argument that in the end there has to be just one thing.
Yeah.
And it goes like this.
Yeah.
I have to decide whether or not to sit at home and watch Netflix and eat ice cream, or visit my sick aunt in a hospital, or, read up on astronomy and learn some true things. Because I can make that choice, I have to rank them. I have to say, this is a 7 and this is a 6 and this is an 8.
Yeah.
And so at some level, all of these have to come into one scale. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't buy the objection. There are versions of it that I might buy. If you had a fleshed out theory for why these all boil down to pleasure, and Nikki is a hedonistic utilitarian, and in fact, some of the work she's doing is trying to argue that you don't need the other stuff. You don't need desire satisfaction as a theory because it all boils down to pleasure. But I think you really need a good account of the boiling, because I'm not sure I can rank, rocks and elephants by some metric. And you might say, well, that's a metric that doesn't make that much sense to me. And I would say, no, look, they're both gray. And this one's more gray. But sure. But is it meaningful that you can rank them?
So this is the part where when I was reading Dan Gilbert's view as you described it, I didn't get why what he was saying wasn't just empty. He's saying when you go help the woman, you're helping them because it's more pleasurable. Well, then you're just defining more pleasurable by the thing that you do or the thing that you want to do or where you rank it.
Yeah.
It's what Lowenstein said about economists and the preference, the way that they define it.
Yeah, it's purely empty. It's tautological. So then, if they can say that just the fact that you decide to, go to the Peace Corps for 2 years, it just means that that's pleasurable to you. Then they're not making a substantive claim at that point. That seemed to me, and I don't know if this is true of Nikki, Dave, but that seemed to me the move that Dan Gilbert was making, at least in part. And it's like, well, of course, if you're just defining it by the fact that I rank it higher and you're calling that pleasure, but now, as Dave said, we're not learning anything. It's not meaningful. We're not explaining anything anymore.
Yeah, not surprisingly, I find that pretty convincing. There's a simple-minded hedonist, and this is not Dan. Dan gets more sophisticated than that, who says, look, everything's pleasure. And you say, well, what about this guy who gives his life to save his comrades? Well, he wouldn't have done it if it didn't make him happy, or if he didn't think it would make him happy. Yeah. And then there's just it's purely tautological.
Why is it any different what he's doing? How is how does he avoid that trap?
In some way, it's a burden of proof argument where he says, I say, look, you might spend 90% of your life happy and in pleasure. But if you spend 10% of it thinking, this isn't meaningful, well, you should stop doing it. And the way he says it is, why do we have to assume that the doubts about the meaning of life and the desire for meaning is something above and beyond pleasure? Why don't we just call them the same thing? You're happy for 90% of the time, and you're unhappy for 10% of the time.
But that just doesn't explain the fact that we will choose to experience pleasure even less of the time to pursue some meaningful project or goal.
But he says we're poor decision makers.
Oh, he thinks that given the opportunity, we would have chosen, because there is a way in which this isn't really a criticism of you, Paul. This is a thought that your book made me have, because this is a view that of course I hold, that pain and suffering are cousins. That suffering is just pain plus cognitive,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, an additive theory like that.
Yeah. But you're in collapsing the two, you made me think.
Yeah.
For the first time, maybe this is more like a metaphor.
I just wanted an umbrella term of sort of bad shit.
Yeah.
And I call it
suckiness.
And as I say early in the book, I use the term suffering, and I met somebody who got really mad at me for doing it. It says, suffering is what my parents went through, under Hitler.
Right.
And I'm saying, and I'm using suffering to say, well, sometimes you kind of skip a meal.
That sort of objection is insufferable, by the way.
Suffering is me having to hear you say that. It's weird with this because, philosophy has psychological egoists and hedonists, and I find it, to the extent that it's explanatory, it just seems obviously false in lots of cases. And when it doesn't, it just becomes trivial. It just becomes defined by the things that we end up doing or want to do. Where there seems to be more substance to the view, as you describe it, is in that thought experiment towards the end where he says, you're in the pool 90% of the time, sunning yourself and getting pleasure from that. But 10% of the time or 5% of the time, you're saying, God, my life is sucks. It's just pointless. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything with my life. And he's saying, well, we pay too much attention to the 5%, not enough to the 95%. And that's kind of an interesting claim that for some reason we privilege those reflective moments.
And to go back to your question, why do we get it wrong? I think what Dan would say is because that 5% is to decide, get one who gets to make the decisions and conveniently forgets about the 90%. We say Socrates is better than a pig, but it's Socrates who we're asking.
Right.
What puzzles me about the view that Dan Gilbert seems to defend is that there is some level of abstraction, like I was saying before, in which I agree that there's shit you enjoy and shit you don't, right? And so we could lump this together and say one's pleasure and one's pain, and say those things that we seek out are done by pleasure, and avoid tautology, but just say, like Dan says, sometimes we make errors. But that, if you really want a psychological theory, I think this is the whole point of your book. If you want a psychological theory that helps us understand why in some circumstances we're clearly avoiding pleasure, then it seems silly to just say, well, those cases are just more complicated cases of seeking pleasure. Where I would just say, well, yeah, like fine, but they're more complicated in a way that matters. And I'm just simply limiting, the use of my term pleasure here to mean this very hedonic state. And there's all kinds of cases in which we're not even making errors. Upon reflection, we would choose the pain. And that seems like what the goal of the psychology of it would be. It's like,
I think that's exactly right. I think you take somebody struggling whether to stay home and watch TV and relax or take a long trip to help a friend and he doesn't really want to, knows it'll be unpleasant, isn't at a psychological level choosing between two sorts of pleasures.
right.
It is wrong to subsume it, have a case where somebody has two desserts in front of him and is trying to struggle which one he'll enjoy more.
Right.
It's two
That's right.
genuinely different motivations, genuinely different desires, different brain systems if you want, different histories, different individual differences. It may be that the right view from a philosophical point of view, and it's kind of like Tamler saying that Sisyphus seems like he's in a terrible state, but at a certain abstract level, he's no different from the rest of us.
Yeah.
It might be from a sort of similar bird's eye view. It's all pleasure. But that philosophical hedonism doesn't mean psychological hedonism is correct.
I don't even think the philosophical hedonism is correct. It's just you taking a word and deciding that word covers all sorts of different kinds of states. And I don't know what the truth value of that is. If you're not a Platonist about the concept of pleasure, then it really just one account allows you to distinguish between all sorts of different kinds of motivations and mental states and emotional states, and one just calls it pleasure.
That's right. So
it's a different kind of pleasure.
So
you would probably
yeah.
want to do the more complicated one.
Suppose there's something that a common currency view, which is that when you make decisions, you have to sort of rank everything in the same on a single dimension of, and then take whatever scores highest and you do that. But why would you ever call this dimension pleasure?
Right.
It doesn't seem to be in any straightforward sense what we associate with pleasure. It's more like, I don't know, feasibility or doability or value. It's more like value.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
if you,
exactly.
Yeah. And if you start calling it value, then some things just don't become deeply puzzling. You don't have to worry so much about why BDSM exists.
Yes.
And
it explains why it's a difficult question to decide whether, I don't know, to go on a 1-week vacation versus stay home and visit, my sick friend, because they both have value. And when you calculate the value, maybe they come out pretty darn close.
But they're different kinds of value,
That's
and
right.
it's worth investigating
That's right.
how they're different, and not just that there are different forms of pleasure that just happen to be close to each other on the scale.
It's funny because I think one of the sources for why people are tempted to lump these things together as maybe in sort of a dual process kind of theory is that, yeah, at the end of the day, you have to decide whether or not to do something. And that's a binary decision. And it much like we've talked about system 1 and system 2, Tamler, where, you say sometimes you think deeply and sometimes you think shallowly, I suppose, but you're losing a whole lot of kinds of thinking by doing that. And, if you want to be like an economist and say, look, I have a revealed preference. Everything that you reveal to me to choose is something that gives you pleasure. I'm just defining it as such. It's because there's a way in which we rank all, we could be pluralists about value and motivation, and we have all these sophisticated things, but in the end, we have to choose whether to go to the zoo with our children or sit home and watch Pornhub. And maybe that's the temptation. Yeah.
And sometimes it's an uncomfortable choice. I remember when one of my kids was very young, he asked me, I was traveling a lot. And he asked me if I'd be home for his birthday. And I said, of course I'll be home for your birthday. And he said, you'd be home for my birthday no matter what, right? And I said, of course. But I remember thinking, no. And I tried to think, how much money would they pay me before I wouldn't be home for his birthday? And, it was a lot less than $1 million. Somebody offered me $1 million not to be home for his birthday. Of course I'd go for $1 million. And
what about like $20?
It was
right. It's like, is that Churchill? Now that we've determined you're a whore.
Yeah.
You see, it's the worry about being called a whore that rationality gets such a bad name.
By the way,
not $20, $2,000 maybe.
I did not know about that E.L. Thorndike study where he asked people how much money they would. I loved learning about that. That was great.
This was a study by this guy who's this behaviorist from way back, associated with sort of very narrow and technical work, and he has this crazy ass paper. It's like the 1930s or something, where he just says, well, here's a question I'm kind of curious about, which is how much would people pay to avoid certain disutilities? This is a survey. And the disutilities are things like, eating a worm, spitting on your mother's picture. Thorndike shows himself as a man of great imagination.
It's a Paul Rosen study. It's a
Paul Rosen study. Yeah, spending the rest of your life in Kansas, never leaving.
You said Russia in the book. You said Russia.
Russia. I don't want to lose my Kansan audience. Things like becoming deaf in one ear. Some of them are crazy. Walking down Fifth Avenue in the middle of the day without a hat. Because the times were different, and
that's a universal. Come on, that's a universal.
I mean, it's one step away from a Fox game show where you say, will you stick your penis into a hornet's nest, and how much money would have to pay you to do that?
It's Squid Game.
It's basically Squid Game. And the cool thing is the numbers are fascinating. My favorite example of this is you ask people how much you have to pay them to pull out one of their teeth with a pair of pliers, which is disfiguring and painful, versus how much would I have to pay you to kill a cat with your hands? And people want a lot more for the second one.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
I would choke the shit out of that cat.
Yeah, I'd pay you to get a chance to kill a cat.
Yeah, fuck the cat. If it was a dog, that would be one.
Fuck the cat's a different
I'll pull the tooth. Yeah.
There is that, the kill a puppy video.
I was back to the pool, pleasure example where he says we're making an error because we're only asking the reflective self, the Socrates. What does that mean exactly, that we're making an error sometimes when we choose to do the thing that is more uncomfortable? Like what would determine whether that's an error or not?
Well, take a fanciful case. Suppose 90% of the time you're blissfully happy. 10% of the time you're miserable. But we just ask you during that 10%. That seems like a crappy way to do it. Suppose just to make it, suppose you lose your memory at 90%, or suppose you're mute during 90%. That seems unfair. It seems like if you view an individual as a population, you just kind of ask the top 1%, how's your society going? And they say it's going terrific.
Well, right. But in those cases, the reason it's a mistake or it's the wrong way of measuring it is because they could be asking it all these other times.
Because it's arbitrary,
and it's arbitrary. But in this case, as I understand the thought experiment, you can't ask the person while they're experiencing pleasure, because as soon as you ask them and they thought about it, they'd be like, "Oh, my life is pointless and stupid," And so like that doesn't seem like the right analogy there.
Yeah. I agree with you. That's how I end it. In fact, at one point I point out, like, well, who would want to get advice from a pig? Who would want to get advice from somebody? The thing about Socrates is he's smart. He thinks about the future and the past and thinks about other people too.
But I even think it's stronger than that. It's by definition, you can't get it from the pig, because once the pig starts thinking about it, they're no longer a pig. They're Socrates.
But that's too strong. Don't you think the pig's pleasure should be taken into account?
Yes, absolutely. But presumably Socrates is taking the pleasure into account too of, his earlier time in the pool.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's weird that, to talk about these errors sometimes, like you see this in like the rationality research. Well, people will make errors. They'll take $10 now and not like $20 next week or something like how is that an error? That's just you're making a choice, but they call it an error. And I always wonder what the kind of normative assumptions are for like how you determine whether something is an error or not.
No, you're right. I mean, if I go to my retirement guy and I say, I've decided not to put any money aside for retirement and just enjoy it now, he'd scream at me and say, you're an idiot. You're going to really regret this, many years from now. And I'm saying, why are you taking the side of my future self? Like, how do you know?
Don't you know I'm a Parfidian?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't 25 years, like the world is going to be on fire.
Yeah.
Well, shall we end with that pleasing note?
The world on fire.
Paul, I really enjoyed reading this book. I strongly urge our listeners to grab them while they're still available.
Yes.
For the
they only
edition.
printed out 300 copies and 300 electrical ones. So,
do you have any NFTs?
Yeah, it's an NFT.
Oh, I should get an NFT. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's where the real money for books comes.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. This was really fun.
Oh, thanks. This has been tons of fun. Really appreciate it.
Join us next time on Very Bad Wizards.
The Cleveland boss has spoken. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Good man. They think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have. Pay no attention to that man. Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.